My mom told me if you can't have a child, we should get divorced, he said. Fine, I understand. Though I'm pregnant right now. What? I am Emily. A housewife in my 30s. Living with my husband, a company employee. I met my husband while working at a food-related company. As we talked several times about business dealings, I was completely charmed by his occasional smile and asked him out. When I asked him out, he rejected me, saying, "Sorry, I'm flattered, but I have a girlfriend." However, a month later, he approached me, saying, "I broke up with her, will you go out with me?" Apparently, he started noticing me from the time I confessed, and his girlfriend, sensing something was off, asked, "Did you fall for someone else?" When he agreed with his girlfriend's suggestion of, maybe we should break up, they ended their relationship. I felt guilty for ruining his relationship, but he reassured me with a smile, saying, "It wouldn't have lasted long anyway, don't worry about it." Comforted by him, we got married after dating for 3 years. When we decided to marry, he said, "I'd like to have kids after marriage, so could you be a stay-at-home wife and support me and the children?" At that time, I was working at a somewhat harsh company and didn't want to continue working. So, I followed his suggestion and chose to become a housewife. I decided to support my husband. The transition from a working woman to a housewife was challenging, but I didn't mind. Because our newlywed life was blissful, always at the pinnacle of happiness. Every day was joyful and happy. And the absence of any mother-in-law problems was a significant factor. My husband's parents' house was just a 10-minute walk from our apartment. I initially feared frequent visits and potential harassment, but that turned out to be an unfounded worry. My husband's parents are very kind. Whenever I say, "I have a question," they go out of their way to come to our house and kindly, thoroughly explain things to me. Despite our struggles to have children, they never complained, with my mother-in-law even saying, to me, "You're more precious than a grandchild. I've always wanted a daughter since our family only had men. Please let me continue to cherish you like my own daughter." I adored my mother-in-law and trusted my quiet but reliable father-in-law. But this harmonious relationship only lasted the first few years. As time went by, my once kind in-laws gradually changed. My father-in-law became even quieter, and my mother-in-law seemed like a different person. Or perhaps, this was her true nature. To put it simply, her attitude towards me went from +100 to -100. My mother-in-law has become quite harsh towards me. She frequently visits our house, especially when my husband isn't around, and nags me, repeatedly pressuring me, "Show us our grandchild's face soon. That's your duty as a wife." Previously, she'd said, "Children are gifts from heaven. They'll come naturally when the time is right, so don't rush." Moreover, she compared me to other families, pressuring me, "The lady next door just had a baby. And the one next to her is pregnant. What about you?" But no matter how much she pressured, it was pointless without my husband's willingness. Initially, he wanted children, but a year into our marriage, he lost interest. Even when I tried to initiate intimacy, my husband declined, saying, "I'm too tired, maybe another time," or "Don't disturb me while I'm gaming." Even when I discussed this with my mother-in-law, she didn't understand and kept pushing for a child, increasing my stress day by day. Unable to withstand the attacks from my mother-in-law, I talked to my husband about the pressure to have a grandchild. He casually agreed to try more for a child, saying, "I don't think we need to rush." Despite our efforts, I didn't get pregnant. Moreover, throughout this time, my mother-in-law continuously blamed me, saying, "It's because you're not trying hard enough. My son is not at fault at all." I even suspected that the stress from her was making it harder for me to conceive. Unable to bear the pressure, we finally decided to seek fertility treatment. I thought I could finally relax, but then a different problem arose, troubling me. It was about my husband. Since starting fertility treatment, he became cold towards me, locking himself in his room to play games upon returning from work. And even ignoring me when I tried to talk. It would have been bearable if it was just that, but my husband, who got upset about my spending on crafting materials and took out his work stress on me, became increasingly volatile. Whenever I argued back, he would snap, saying, "Who do you think allows you to live this life? You're just a NEET," and continued his selfish behavior. Even when I told him I quit my job because you wanted me to, he refused to listen. One day, I found him playing games at home during his usual work hours. I asked, "Aren't you going to work?" He replied, "I quit." He had quit his job without telling me. Shocked, I asked why, but he just got angry, saying, "It's my business." I was disgusted with his attitude, but there was nothing I could do about the job he had already quit. Initially, I wasn't panicked about money, thinking we could manage for a while with unemployment benefits and our home savings. However, the stress started building up as my husband showed no interest in finding a new job. After quitting his job, my husband started spending all day at home. I wish he would go outside sometimes, but his hobby is gaming. He hardly ever leaves the house, except to buy cigarettes at the convenience store. Since he stopped working, the amount of time we spend together has significantly increased. In the beginning, this might have been seen positively as more time for affection, but now it's different. Just like with my mother-in-law, the increase in time spent with my husband, whose attitude has changed from +100 to -100, has led to more frequent arguments between us. Gradually, I've realized that even just talking to him is stressful, and we've almost stopped conversing altogether. I wonder if there's any point in continuing this kind of married life, I thought, beginning to feel like I'm reaching my limit with this marriage. I wanted to find a way out of this situation. One day, fed up with his lazy gaming, I confronted him, "You're not a child, stop playing games all day and start looking for a job." He then said, "By the way, my mom told me if you can't have a child, we should get divorced." At that moment, I was thankful to my mother-in-law. It was like she was assisting me. Plus, I was pregnant. I found out after a checkup that day and planned to tell him that night. But not telling him turned out to be the right decision. It meant I could distance myself from my mother-in-law and husband. I said, "Okay, I understand. Here are the divorce papers," and handed him the pre-filled form from my dresser. My husband, apparently not expecting me to agree to the divorce, let alone have prepared divorce papers ready, was shocked and frozen when he saw it, uttering, "What?" His usual domineering attitude was nowhere to be seen. He was that surprised, with a dumbfounded look on his face. He seemed to want to say something but filled in the papers, believing he must obey his mother. He kept glancing at me while filling them in. We agreed to discuss property division later, but we didn't have much to divide. We didn't need to worry much about dividing assets because we hardly had any. In fact, my husband often spent a lot of money on his hobbies. Not only did he play games at home, but he also seemed to have spent a considerable amount at amusement arcades. He had criticized my spending before, but in reality, he was the one who spent more recklessly than I did. He never had the mindset to save money. Even before our marriage, he never saved, and this didn't change after our marriage, so we had no significant assets. When we realized there was no property to divide, I thought our discussion was over. But my husband insisted it wasn't and pointed to a bank statement, saying, "Don't we still have our savings?" Indeed, that bank statement contained a significant amount of savings, and he suggested we divide it. However, these savings were not subject to division. When I explained, "This is the money I saved before our marriage, so it's not part of the property division," his face rapidly turned pale. Yet, he argued, "Right, but this apartment should be part of the division, right? I lived here too." I had to reveal the harsh truth to him. "Unfortunately, the apartment is in my name, so you have no rights to it. Besides, I've already put it up for sale. So you can't live here anymore. Please leave soon as it would be a bother," I told him with a smile. I had been saving for a house, anticipating that this apartment might become too small in the future. Before marrying, saving money was my hobby, so I had accumulated considerable savings even as a regular employee. I had bought the apartment with those savings, so I did have some assets. With the money from selling the apartment, I could build a nice house in the city center. Of course, all that property was mine from before the marriage and not included in the division. It seems my husband was unaware of this fact. He apparently thought he would receive half of my property, but unfortunately for him, that was not the case. Realizing he wouldn't get any part of my property, my husband was left in a daze. After that, we continued the discussion, but my husband couldn't snap out of his daze. Since there wasn't much left to talk about, the discussion ended quickly, and we submitted the divorce papers to the lawyers. Our divorce was successfully finalized. A few months later, I returned to my parents' home and, with their support, gave birth to a healthy baby boy. I named him Ambrose, inspired by the phrase, "A boys, be ambitious." Now, I'm living a fulfilling life with my parents and beloved child. Of course, I haven't informed my ex-husband and his family. I haven't informed them because I'm certain that if I did, my former mother-in-law would surely storm in, demanding, "Give me back my grandchild." Meanwhile, my ex-husband, after being kicked out of the apartment, returned to his parents' home. He became a recluse, shocked by the easy acceptance of the divorce. Even when he goes out, he looks so suspicious that he frequently gets stopped by the police. It's quite a pitiful situation. I later learned that the reason my husband quit his job was due to a souring of work relationships. Apparently, my ex-husband was disliked at his company for his bad mouth, especially by female colleagues, and eventually, everyone started ignoring him. Unable to endure this situation, he suddenly quit his job one day. He might have been this way even before our marriage. Only kind towards me. A real wolf in sheep's clothing. 3 years later, I'm working as a manager of a craft store. When I became a regular at a local craft store, the manager, Linda, approached me with a proposition. "I'm getting old and thinking about retiring. If you're interested, Emily, would you like to take over this store?" Linda proposed to me. At that time, my parents were actively helping with childcare, and I was thinking about getting a job. If I declined, the store would close down. That would surely inconvenience many of the regular customers. Considering this, I decided to accept the offer and take over the store. While attending to a regular customer today, an unexpected pair visited me. Indeed, the unexpected visitors were my former mother-in-law and ex-husband. "Wow, this is a nice shop for you to have." "Yeah, Mom. Look, this fabric seems like it would suit you." Annoyed by their transparent flattery, I asked, "What brings you here?" My former mother-in-law then demanded, "Give me back my grandson." It appeared she had somehow learned about my child's birth and wanted him as the heir to their family. "You were already pregnant when I demanded the divorce. Why did you keep quiet?" "If I had known, I wouldn't have gone through with the divorce." My ex-husband accused me. "That's exactly why I wanted a divorce. If you had known about the pregnancy, you would have used any means to stop the divorce." I glared at my ex-husband and former mother-in-law. My former mother-in-law then demanded, "So, are you going to give me back my grandchild or not? I want to live with my grandchild soon. You've had enough time with him for 3 years. It's my turn now," she said, making another absurd statement. As I stood there in disbelief, my parents and Ambrose appeared, asking, "What's the matter? Is there a problem?" It seems they were alerted by a regular customer and had hurried over to help. Seeing Ambrose holding hands with my parents, my former mother-in-law tried to approach him, saying, "Oh, how cute. He looks just like my son when he was a child. Look, I'm your grandma." I tried to stop her, but it wasn't necessary. Ambrose clung to my mother, saying, "This is my only grandma." "So, would you mind leaving now?" my mother asked my former mother-in-law. "Just give me the kid." My ex-husband suddenly lunged to forcefully take Ambrose from my parents. I stood in front of Ambrose to protect him, but being much smaller, I was easily pushed aside. "Ambrose, be careful," I cried out. My ex-husband was inches away from grabbing Ambrose's arm. But then, his body suddenly flew through the air. "What?" Looking up, I saw my father, who had just performed a shoulder throw. Yes, my father had thrown my ex-husband in the nick of time. Unknown to my ex-husband, my father was a police officer with national-level judo skills. In pain and unable to speak, my ex-husband just looked pitifully at my father. "If you continue to bother my child or grandchild, I'll have to take action," my father warned, showing his police badge. Upon seeing this, my former mother-in-law, pale-faced, quickly pulled my ex-husband away and fled. I don't know what happened to them afterward. And frankly, I don't want to. Several years later, inspired by my father, Ambrose started aspiring to become a police officer. I'll be a police officer when I grow up. Then I can protect Mom too, he said, working hard in his studies to achieve this goal. He's now unbeaten in judo among his peers, trained by my father. I'm looking forward to watching my son grow into a fine person. Having a painting like that in the entryway would be embarrassing, wouldn't it? That's why I took it down. My dear painting, casually sold on a flea market app by my daughter-in-law, Michelle, who said this without any remorse. It was a colored pencil drawing of a gerbera my mother made for me on her deathbed. That painting was a keepsake from my late mother. I know. But I can't display an amateur's painting. It's just too embarrassing. Don't you think that's a bit much, even for a daughter-in-law to say? Even when I bravely spoke up, Michelle didn't flinch. Crossing her arms, she glared at me intensely. Lily, you should consider your position. Remember, when you need care in the future, John and I will be the ones looking after you. There it was, her usual trump card. So, you think that gives you the right to just sell off my things? I am John's one and only wife. You should think carefully about how much you'll need our help. With one more glare, Michelle left the entryway, her high-end brand shoes clicking sharply as she walked away. Tomorrow, I will be moving to a new house all by myself. Knowing this, Michelle sold the painting just to spite me. This wasn't the first time my son John and his wife Michelle had sold my belongings without my consent. I was angry, but had resigned myself since I couldn't get them back. But selling my dear mother's keepsake that I cannot forgive. Both Michelle and my son John, who is completely under her thumb, infuriate me. Once I move to my new house tomorrow, I will completely cut ties with my son and his wife. They can live as they please in this old house, with my husband and themselves. I am Lily, a 50-year-old housewife. I've been doing part-time work in a factory while handling all the household chores for many years. Taking care of my family, which included my husband, our only son, and for the last 3 years, my daughter-in-law Michelle as well. 6 months ago, I lost my mother, who raised me all by herself. And she left me a substantial amount of life insurance money. With that, I decided to buy a small, newly built house and separate from my increasingly distant husband. Michelle sold my mother's painting the day before I was to move into that house. When I said I was moving out, my husband just replied with a simple, "Do as you like." Our relationship had grown cold over the years. Neither of us were to blame, it was just inevitable. However, the ones who strongly opposed my move were my son and his wife. Who will do the housework if you leave, Lily? Michelle, you're a housewife too, aren't you? I'm a civil servant, just like John, not a part-timer like you. Michelle's right, Mom. It's ridiculous for a mother to abandon her family. As I was packing, my son and his wife kept complaining. Why buy a house now of all times? It's my money, left to me by my mother. I can spend it however I please. The life insurance money should have been used for the family. Buying a house for yourself is just wasteful. Yeah, you should have shared some of Grandma's insurance money with us. My daughter-in-law, who never washes even a single piece of underwear and prefers to spend her time on dance, yoga, and Italian lessons. All while indulging in branded goods. My son, completely henpecked by her, joining in to scold me. I'm just fed up with it all. On the night of the move, my friend Emma, who lives near my new place, invited me over. Let's have dinner together, she suggested. Today, my husband is out for a drinking party, so it's a perfect time. Thank you. I haven't even unpacked my dishes from the boxes yet. Emma's house is an impressive single-family home. She and her husband built a large house because they are dog lovers and wanted to keep large breeds. Currently, in a corner of the living room, 3 Dobermans are relaxing quietly. While eating the hamburgers Emma made, I shared my troubles about John and Michelle with her. What's with that daughter-in-law? And sorry to say, but your son sounds pitiful. John has always been a bit timid, but now he's completely under his wife's thumb. It's frustrating. A large dog approached me as if to offer comfort and curled up at my feet. Among the 3 Dobermans, it was the female named Daisy. Daisy is much kinder than my own son. My dogs are all smart and well-behaved. I used to be a dog trainer, you know. Emma, who used to be a dog trainer, is very skilled in handling dogs. The 3 dogs present may look big and intimidating, but they're actually gentle and very intelligent. They never attack people, but at Emma's command, they can bark at unwelcome guests with ease. I wish I had a gentle dog like Daisy. Well, why don't you get one? I'll help you train it. Indeed, starting today, I'm free to do whatever I want. I'm about to start a new life in my small, newly built house. That should be enough, right? That's what I thought, until Michelle and I are moving into the family home next month. That's what my son called to tell me at the end of the month. I was just getting used to living alone and beginning to enjoy my freedom. The family home. Oh, you mean Michelle's family home? No, Mom, your house. My house. You are living in your father's house, so that should be the family home. I didn't understand what he was talking about. Michelle and I talked about it, and we decided that a family home really means the mother's house, not the father's. So, we've decided to move into your house. That's not possible. My house is too small. There's no space for 3 people to live. This is a joke. I absolutely refuse to be bossed around and burdened with all the housework by John and Michelle again. But there's at least one room to sleep in, right? You can sleep in a corner of the living room and we'll use that room. Don't be ridiculous. Absolutely not. Me, sleep in a corner of the living room? The very idea makes my head boil with anger. Even if you say no, we're moving in. I'll start by sending some boxes by courier. I'll refuse to accept them. Yeah, I'll figure something out. Anyway, we're moving in, so just be ready. John said this and abruptly hung up the phone. I don't want this. Absolutely not. I can't allow this to happen. The next day, I went to a family restaurant with Emma. I desperately needed someone to talk to. Sorry to say, but they are the worst kind of son and daughter-in-law. While sipping her cafe latte, Emma said this in disbelief. You absolutely must not accept this. You need to firmly refuse. But knowing those 2, they might just hire movers and start bringing furniture. I just don't know what to do. I took a sip of my jasmine tea, as if trying to wash away my pathetic feelings. Though it's my favorite tea, it tasted incredibly bitter. Yeah, it would be hard to refuse if movers brought everything. It could even lead to trouble. I need to find a way to make them realize they can't come to my house. I want to teach them a lesson for their rotten attitudes. Maybe we could enlist the help of my pets. Your pets. Her pets are Max, Duke, and Daisy. They are her 3 Dobermans. My pets can bark and growl on command, they can put on a bit of a show. Maybe they could scare them off. True, John has been afraid of dogs since he was a child. Living with a son and daughter-in-law who would sell your mother's keepsake is tough. Let's think of something. Yes, thank you, Emma. Talking with her has lightened my heart a little. However, when I got home, I realized that my son and his wife were serious. There were 2 large cardboard boxes piled up in front of the entrance. John and my belongings. Since you said you would refuse delivery, we brought them ourselves. We'll definitely be moving in next month. So please put them in the house. Michelle. Reading the note attached to the boxes, I felt disheartened. Reluctantly, I brought the boxes inside and opened them to find various personal items of my son and his wife. John's foreign-made watch and leather jacket. Michelle's high-end brand bags, clothes, and shoes. They deliberately left expensive items that I would hesitate to throw away. Their tactics are just too underhanded. Between selling my mother's painting and now this, what do they think of me? Maybe we could enlist the help of my pets. Emma's words from the family restaurant echoed in my head. Ever since I settled into my new home, I've occasionally joined Emma and her dogs for walks. She invites me for a change of scenery. Friends are indeed valuable. I'm truly grateful. Why not just sell their belongings? Your daughter-in-law does it, right? That's true, she even sold the painting my mother left me. At the end of the leash I'm holding, Max, the male dog, looks at me with kind eyes. Still, why are your son and daughter-in-law so eager to live with you, Lily? They're both civil servants and financially stable, they should be able to live on their own. They don't want to do housework, especially Michelle. She's always busy with her hobbies, going out, and watching fashion and makeup videos. So, you've been doing all the housework alone until now? Yes. My husband never does anything, and John is often busy with overtime and business trips. And Michelle, well, you know. I remembered an overheard conversation between my son and his wife on the day I announced I was leaving the house. Who will do the housework if Lily leaves? Well, that would be you. No way, absolutely not. We'll be in trouble if we can't make her do everything. Emma sighed in disbelief as I told her this. A week later, my phone was flooded with calls from Michelle. After dozens of calls, I reluctantly answered. Is your new place a small house? Yes, it is. I've told you that before. John said he saw you walking with 3 big dogs. He was wondering if you could really keep 3 dogs in such a small house. That's when it clicked. Michelle must be afraid of dogs. There are people who fear dogs. John is one of them. They must have been too preoccupied with the dogs to notice Emma with me. I've told you it's a small house. If you're worried, why don't you come and see? We will, yes. We want to check the inside of the house too. Michelle's voice sounded a bit relieved. Maybe she concluded there were no dogs. Anyway, we'll come this Sunday at 10 a.m. She said quickly and hung up. I couldn't help but let out a yes, under my breath. Unintentionally, the counterattack had begun. On Sunday, as expected, John and Michelle came to my house. You actually came. We said we would. Let's go in. Really, Mom, it's all because you whimsically bought a house that we're dealing with this hassle. Exactly. You should have just quietly continued doing the housework as before. Grumbling, the couple took off their shoes and entered the house. Good, this is perfect. I smirked internally and opened the living room door. Whoa. Eek. In the next moment, my son and his wife screamed in unison. There, sitting in the living room, were 2 male Dobermans, Max and Duke. No way. Mom, these dogs. These are my dogs. Aren't they cute? I got them from Emma, a dog trainer who's sitting over there. Emma, who was sitting on the sofa, stood up and smiled warmly. They're well-trained and very sweet. Max, Duke, would you greet our guests? The 2 dogs barked once in unison. No way. Michelle exclaimed in fear. Michelle, overwhelmed by fear, sat down clutching her head. She seemed to have a strong aversion to dogs. Oh, these dogs are adorable. Don't worry. Max, Duke, go play. At Emma's command, the 2 dogs ran towards John and Michelle. The tails wagging, eager to play. Stop, no, I'm scared. Michelle shook her head and began to tremble. Max was only trying to invite her to play, but Michelle couldn't understand that. I'm scared of dogs. Eventually, Michelle started to cry, her face becoming a mess of tears and runny nose. If you're going to live here, you'll need to get along with these dogs. Stop it, please. Her YouTube-researched makeup was ruined. Mascara running, eyeshadow glitter spread down her cheeks. High-end foundation smeared by tears and snot. How would she face the ride home on the train with this face? Mom, do something. Meanwhile, John, intimidated by the larger Duke, had fallen and was backing away. Interpreting his movement as play, Duke joyfully jumped on him. Stop it. Big dogs are scary. Looking at John's jeans, I noticed a change in color around the crotch area. He was so scared of the dogs, he had an accident. How pitiful. Max, Duke, come here. Emma, sensing it was time, called the dogs back. They immediately left John and Michelle and returned to her side. Max, Duke, down. With one command, the dogs lay down at Emma's feet. Such intelligent animals. All this time, I was busy with part-time work and house chores, and you didn't lift a finger to help. Then you decide to move into my house as soon as I say I'm leaving. How much more can you belittle your mother? I let out the words I had been holding in as the sobbing couple stood up. I left the house because I was fed up with you too. I am not your housekeeper. But, the dogs. They are well trained and kinder than you too. Gone was the usual assertive demeanor of John and Michelle. A husband with a wet crotch and a wife with ruined makeup. A fitting pair. And to top it off, selling my precious belongings without permission. I will never forgive you for selling my mother's keepsake painting. I said it all in one breath, then looked at the calmly lying Max and Duke before turning back to my son and his wife. With two big dogs like this, I'd rather not have you here. Yeah, we give up on moving in. So, give us back the stuff we left here last time. Then we'll leave. It's in the next room, still in the boxes. Take them and get out. Pointing to the next room, John and Michelle carefully avoided the dogs as they opened the door to retrieve their belongings. And then... Whoa. Eek. The couple screamed again and fell to the ground. Of course, they would. Beside the cardboard boxes they left in the room sat another Doberman, Daisy. Mom, get the boxes for us. No. You brought them, you take them. Peering into the room, Daisy sat calmly. I can't go near with that dog beside them. Then give up on the boxes. Leave them? My bags and John's watch are in there. You disposed of my precious things without asking, didn't you? I'm not saying leave them. I'm telling you to take them. Michelle glared at me for a moment. Then, remembering the dog, sighed and looked down. Please, Mom. Get the boxes. John, you and Michelle made fun of me. Despite knowing how important that painting was to me, you let her sell it. I know I was wrong, but... Then, Emma approached me. Daisy, would you greet our guests? Instantly, Daisy barked loudly while still sitting. No. I can't take this anymore. Hearing Daisy's bark, the couple reached their limit. With John's wet jeans and Michelle's smeared makeup, they ran to the entrance and fled the house. After that, I sold all the belongings John and Michelle left behind at a brand buyback store. John's watch and Michelle's bags turned out to be quite valuable luxury items. Their extravagant lifestyle was astonishing. Michelle, back at her husband's house, ended up doing all the household chores. My husband, used to my standards, was dissatisfied with her housework. Complaining about her cooking, the untidy house, and the pileup of laundry. Unable to pursue her hobbies due to the chores, Michelle gained 20 pounds from stress. Her irritation was all directed at John. Mom, I can't take it anymore. Michelle has started hitting me. She's always fighting with Dad, and I want a divorce. John sounded exhausted when he called me one day. You chose her as your wife. Handle it yourself. Of course, I didn't offer any advice to John. I was fed up with getting involved with that couple. Meanwhile, I bought a female Shiba Inu and asked Emma to train her. This one will be a good dog. Emma smiled warmly as she petted the puppy I named Coco. Really, it's all thanks to you, Emma. I'm sorry for making your dogs play such roles. It's fine. Hearing your story, I was the one getting angry. But now, you can live peacefully with Coco. Yes, from now on, it's time to enjoy my life, my time. With that resolution in my heart, I gently picked up Coco.